Today on the Big 3 in 30, Miami gets an edge rusher out of the transfer portal.
But the D-line's going to be sick next year.
Is the Big 10 starting a dominant run in college football?
A three-peat for the Big 10 Conference. It's also the fact that the SEC was downright the worst conference when it came to bowl season this year.
And Bill Self will soon be back with Kansas basketball.
I think the expectation to me is that he would be the head coach for Saturday in the game against K-State. So that's all good.
This is the Big 3 in 30 NBA. The three biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The Big 3 in 30 NBA starts now. Thank you for making the Big 3 in 30 your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The Miami Hurricanes had one of the best defensive lines in college football this season, and Mario Cristobal is already reloading. Locked On Canes host Alex Dono looks at Missouri transfer Damon Wilson.
Miami's defensive line, I know they're losing some really important players, but the D-line's going to be sick next year. The edge rusher rotation, they have big shoes to fill. Ruben Bain, Hakeem Mesidor off to the NFL, but they are filling those big shoes with some very large feet with the way things are going on. All right, so Damon Wilson, he visited Miami, I guess after the long weekend. He was on campus Tuesday at the U, did go back home to kind of weigh his options and decide, and ultimately the 6'4", 250-pound edge rusher, he chooses Miami over the likes of LSU and Texas Tech. So this is a big win in transfer portal recruiting for Miami. And a big part of Wilson's decision was seeing, not only the sort of season Miami had rushing the passer this past year, which was just incredible, top of the nation in pressures. You had two elite performers and some other really good performers on the edge. And why wouldn't you, for one more year in college, because that's what Wilson has, why wouldn't you want to get your final coaching and your final development from the likes of Jason Taylor, the Pro Football Hall of Famer, JT, who coaches Miami's edge rushers, and he works together with Damian Lewis as the co-defensive line coaches, with Lewis, a former defensive tackle, focusing more on the interior, and JT, the man with the gold jacket, focusing on the guys on the edge. So why wouldn't you want that sort of coaching, seeing the type of success that Jason Taylor has had? So a little bit more on the season that Damon just had. 13 games at Mizzou this past season. He gets 9.5 tackles for loss, 9 sacks. One of the best pass rushing defenses was Mizzou, and he was at the forefront of that. He gets 54 quarterback pressures this past season. According to Pro Football Focus, that's top 10 in the country. 23 overall tackles this past year. And now Damon Wilson is on his way to the University of Miami. So you just look, and you can correct me in the comments if I leave anybody out that's going to be in Miami's pass rush this coming season. Damon Wilson, who, is going to have to earn it, but obviously projects as a starter at Miami based on what he's done in the SEC the past few years. Damon Wilson, Marquise Lightfoot, who just had a really good year and a little bit low-key because Mesidor and Bain were the headline makers, but Marquise Lightfoot was a problem for opposing offensive lines this season. He's got the speed and the explosiveness, and Lightfoot continues to add more size to his frame. I expect Lightfoot, if not to be a starter, probably will be a starter this coming season, to be a prominent part of the edge rusher rotation. Third, Herbert Scroggins. I project big things from him. He got his feet wet, had some important reps this year. Hayden Lowe, don't forget about Lowe coming off of injury, right? Hayden Lowe is a true freshman at Miami this year, suffered the ACL injury right before the season, missed the entire season, did start practicing with the team late in the year. Lowe is going to be a monster. Armando Blunt, the versatility to play at a high level inside and outside. Cole McConaughey, who was injured. And Miami also brings in super talented true freshmen like Ashari Charles and DeAnthony Lafayette. Ashari Charles especially looks like a guy who can impact the team immediately. So the Miami edge rusher rotation, you throw in Damon Wilson, you go from strength this past season to strength this coming year. And again, they're going to have to try to replicate the production of Bane and Mesidor. Miami certainly has the bodies and the elite talent on their defensive line to have, that sort of success this coming season. They have some really good players there. Damon Wilson II solidifies that edge rotation. And on the defensive line, we also got some really good news earlier today that Ahmad Moten Sr. is coming back for his senior year. Senior coming back for the senior year. A lot of the word senior in that one. But Ahmad Moten, who just had an awesome year as a starting defensive tackle at the University of Miami, was not 100% certain that he was going to play his final year at the U. Ahmad is coming back. So you think about Ahmad Moten coming back with Justin Scott. Miami also landed Jarquez Carter from Ohio State is coming over in the transfer portal. The Hurricanes defensive line, folks, I can't emphasize this enough, is going to be great. They really thrive in Corey Heatherman's defense, and the coaching combination of D. Lou and JT has been awesome for that group. So, Damon Wilson, welcome to the U. We were talking earlier on, this is our third episode of the day, man. We were talking, earlier about Gerard Pringle entering the transfer portal. I know there's been some Alabama smoke, but also I'm not going to completely rule out Miami finding a way to retain Pringle. I know that's something that Pete Nakos at On3 Sports put in his, rundown of the situation that, it could be Alabama or it could be seeing him retained by Miami. And I think I speak for all Miami Hurricanes fans when I say you would love to see Gerard Pringle suit up again at running back for the Hurricanes. Fletcher coming back, he's the clear number one. But then between Marty Brown and Gerard Pringle, with Pringle providing that change of pace and that quickness and speed and burst on the outside, I think he'd be an important player to return for the U. But, if he does go, that would give Jordan Lyle, if he stays, more opportunities to kind of bounce back next year, because this season Lyle dealt with injuries that put him behind. Chris Wheatley-Humphrey is also still on the team and had some good moments, in the limited playing time he got this year. So I think Miami's going to be more than okay at running back. But obviously, if I had my way, I would prefer to retain a guy like Gerard Pringle. And obviously we're following other transfer portal situations. There's nothing new since we spoke earlier today about Darian Mensah. Again, I expect this is going to end with a big financial settlement that Miami would pay to Duke, and that Darian Mensah, the star quarterback, is going to end up at Miami. We'll know a lot more about that when we get close to that February 2nd court date. We're also following his top wide receiver who may want to join him here at Miami. We've also been following, Jordan Seaton, the offensive tackle from Colorado. That one seems to be trending in LSU's direction, but I was hearing about some drama. And I know Matt Moscona, my colleague who hosts Locked On LSU, has been all over this story that, apparently Seaton was going to commit to LSU, but his uncle is very much involved in the process, and the uncle, I guess, wants him to go to Oregon, was receiving some kind of allegedly financial compensation from Oregon, so it's like a whole thing now. LSU's trying to win the uncle over. I mean, that's the most 2026 transfer portal recruiting story, right? So we'll see how that one plays out. Miami has kind of been considered to be in that top three for Jordan Seaton with LSU and Oregon. But, I don't know. Maybe Miami still has a shot, but it seems like that one might be trending in a different direction. But we'll continue to follow that one. But Damon Wilson to Miami is huge. We keep our eyes on Darian Mensah of Duke and receiver Cooper Barkate from Duke. Barkate, who hit the transfer portal officially last night, 72 receptions for 1,106 yards, 7 touchdowns this past year. I mean, you talk about Miami's offense likely being stacked for next year, the defense clearly being stacked with what the Hurricanes have added.
Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 College. Indiana made it 3 straight national championships for the Big 10 earlier this week, so is the new best conference in the country on track to dominate the way the SEC used to? Jacob Goins and Zach Zako discuss on Locked On Hoosiers.
The Big 10 is definitively the best conference. Jacob, there's no debate anymore. You could say, well, the SEC, they're pretty deep. It's not just about the three-peat that the Big 10 has put together between Indiana, Ohio State, and, well, Michigan. How much weight do we put in that one? But it's still a three-peat for the Big 10 conference. Mm-hmm. It's also the fact that the SEC was downright the worst conference when it came to bowl season this year. So it's not just focusing on the national titles, let alone the SEC hasn't had a representative in a national title since 2022 with Georgia. SEC is down bad. The gap is widening between the Big 10 and the SEC. I would also start to argue that, hey, maybe the Big 12 and the SEC or the ACC are starting to gain a little ground there on the SEC. I'd be worried if I were them.
Yeah, I mean they're clearly not happy about it, right? They are voicing their opinion and the fact that they are being left behind, really, in today's era of college football, because it's an even playing field. It's level across the board because a team like Indiana can go and win a national championship, and they cannot stand it. If it had been Ohio State that had won, or even Oregon who had won the national championship,
wouldn't have this discussion at all.
Right. They would be mad about it because it's the Big 10, but they wouldn't be up in arms because that's one of the teams that was supposed to win it all. They're a big brand in college football. Then there's Indiana, who walks in and has done something that most SEC teams haven't done recently or haven't even done at all. I mean, you're looking at the Southeastern Conference. Their last man standing was Ole Miss, a team that didn't have a head coach, who had to promote one of their coordinators because their coach left for another SEC team. I mean, they are picking themselves apart. They don't know how to handle other conferences and other teams having success, and they better figure it out. Because I'm with you. The Big 10's only getting better. The Big 12 is really, really good. And if the ACC figures it out, other than Miami, the SEC may not have but 1 or 2 representatives in the college football playoff next year.
And that's why I'm so interested in the fact that the SEC isn't on board. It's the Big 10 that's pushing the 24-team playoff, right? The SEC is like, no, maybe we don't want that many teams there. We're going to have that discussion plenty, of course. But there's little to no evidence that the SEC isn't falling behind at this point. It's the three-peat. It's not only the fact that the Big 10 continues to win national titles, it's that the SEC is nowhere to be found. It's not like Ohio State defeated a Georgia or a Texas or an Alabama or an LSU. It's the fact that they're not even in the game. They don't even make it to the end. And then the argument has always been, well, the SEC, it's the deepest conference. And you know what? I subscribe to that belief in the middle of the season. We've had this debate beforehand, but now evidence kind of changes my perception with all of this. That was an awful performance. Other than a team like Texas, right? They beat Michigan. Well, that's a Michigan team that's going through a little bit of a change with a head coaching surge and guys entering the portal, and Texas is retaining most of its players. So they should win that game, right? It's the fact that you have Vanderbilt, right, losing to Iowa. You have Alabama getting blown out, not even a prayer against Indiana. These are the data points that we now have that, it's not this just didn't go the SEC's way. They lost all the consequential bowl matchups. They had a couple of wins, and one of them actually comes in the form of an SEC team beating another SEC team. So it was Texas and Ole Miss, and that's it.
Yeah, and I think, too, Zach, look at the recruiting. Look at the transfer portal. Look at the players that are just going all over the place, the ones that are going to the Big 10, they're going to the Big 12. And yes, the money idea has a lot to do with this. And I'm excluding a place like Texas Tech, who is an outlier here because they're just buying their way to a competitive football team. But look at a place like Penn State, who has a new head coach. Look at a place like Indiana, a place like Michigan State with a new head coach. Like, players are going to these schools and they want to be there. And the SEC doesn't have the stranglehold that it once did. They can't walk in and put their SEC logo on the table and say, this is why you should come to us, and that's why it works. They don't have that anymore. And you're seeing the competitive balance, even within the SEC itself, start to come back to level playing field. And again, they can't stand it. They don't know what to do. And if it's not Alabama, Georgia, or Texas, they just have nobody behind them. I guess Ole Miss was this year, but banking on Lane Kiffin at LSU in year one to win them a national championship. That's not really where I'd want to put my money, man.
Every spot this postseason. Okay. I also should have given credit to Alabama, right? Because they also beat Oklahoma. So that was an SEC bowl game win. You had Ole Miss beating Tulane. They beat Tulane. Congratulations. They also beat Georgia. But every other consequential game, Texas A&M went down. Missouri went down. LSU, well, they're going through a coaching change. Okay, I feel like you should be able to beat Houston, right?
Yeah.
Surely you can beat Houston. You're better than the Big 12, right? Houston wins. Illinois beats Tennessee. Texas gets that win against Michigan, right? Iowa beating Vanderbilt. And you make a great point about how this is where I want to conclude segment one. I want to go back to your original point that Indiana rises to the ranks. Defies all the odds. Most people had this team, including myself. I'm not afraid to admit it, but 8-4, 9-3 around. That was the ballpark. That was general. Hey, maybe they get to 10-2. Okay. And they get back into the playoff. I saw that as their ceiling. Never did I see an undefeated season in a national championship. We can all, for the most part, agree on that. But it's the fact that the SEC will never have something like that.
No.
Okay. The Big Ten can produce a team like this. When is Vanderbilt going to do something like that? Would Mississippi State be able to do something like that? We're a team that's in the lower half of the conference for years and years and years, just all of a sudden rise to the top. I can't project that for any team in the SEC. It's always the heavy hitters of basically Georgia, Alabama. Okay, you had Ole Miss, but can they sustain that? Texas and Oklahoma, they're not really making a move. Basically, it's Georgia runs the conference, and then everybody else kind of beats up on each other. And well, that's the argument of why the SEC is so deep. Okay, well then you would have proved it in the bowl games. You didn't win any that were consequential.
Yeah.
Again, you will never see one of those teams that are in the low half of that conference ascend to the top and defy all the odds, which makes Indiana in the Big Ten more impressive.
Yeah, Vanderbilt got close, right? I mean, they won some games and had Diego Pavia and things like that, but they didn't.
They were never a title. They were never a title contender, though.
No, exactly. That's the difference. Is they had a team who found some good players and found a good quarterback and made it happen, but they were never going to win a national championship. Not even close. Indiana would have beaten them by 4 touchdowns, and so that's the difference. Is the Big Ten can produce other winners not named Ohio State and Michigan, and they proved it this year with Indiana.
Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 College. Kansas basketball has played without Coach Bill Self as of late, but he expects to be back on the sideline for the Jayhawks matchup with rival Kansas State. Locked On Jayhawks host Derek Johnson tells us more.
Bill Self did not coach in the Colorado game, and we have since heard from Bill Self. He had a press conference earlier on Thursday. He also was on Hawk Talk. I think that was Wednesday night. And here is the tweet out. This is from Jayhawk Slant. Right before KU left, Self said he was feeling some abnormal chest issues. Based on past issues, Self said he didn't feel good about it. He was very dehydrated and has AFib. He couldn't get on the plane. He could have coached last night, and he can coach today. No limitation. It was suggested that he not fly last night. Altitude. Bottom line is Coach Self is okay, and he's back on the court. So it doesn't necessarily fully say he's going to be coaching on Saturday. He's at least there, but I think the expectation to me is that he would be the head coach for Saturday in the game against K-State. So that's all good, right? Like we were wondering, look at what is going on here. Like obviously the health thing, it scares you, right? With all the issues that he's had with the heart and the chest stuff over the last couple of years, right? It's just a scary situation for him and his family. So great news that this is manageable stuff. So potentially having him back. And then you look at the Darren Peterson side of things, right? Like Peterson's been dealing with this quad hamstring issue and the cramping all season long. And he finally makes it through a game. And it's the one played in altitude where he sprains his ankle on top of it. So we also got to hear about the status of Darren Peterson. He said yesterday on Hawk Talk, he said he finished the game hurt as evidenced by how he's walking today or the lack thereof. So that's not great. Then at the press conference on Thursday, he said he doesn't know if Darren Peterson is going to be able to play against Kansas State. He has a sprained ankle. He is getting treatment for it. Now, there are different severities of sprained ankles. There's the worst one, which is you having to get surgery on it and you're out for a couple months. There's like a number 2 in there, which is kind of in between. And then there's just kind of your more basically ankle, sprained ankle, where, it could be a week, could be 2 weeks, could be you kind of play through it. So it'll be interesting what happens with KU. Obviously, if they don't play him in this game, their next game wouldn't be for another week in the very big BYU game, right? So maybe it makes sense to do that. But you're at a point where it's like, it's tough to win on the road for Kansas. And obviously it'd be helpful to have Peterson, but if he's not 100%, there's no point in risking that to me, right? Even though as much as you want to beat your rival, you don't risk it with Darren Peterson there, especially with bigger fish to fry coming after with some of those big BYU and Texas Tech and a lot of the teams that the Kansas is going to be playing here. And obviously Kansas State is dealing with some injuries of their own. Abdi Bashir, who is, I wouldn't call him the best defender in the world. He's kind of he does one thing very, very well. He does it at an elite level, and that's shoot the basketball. 44% from three on 8.5 attempts per game. Over the last 3 games, he was shooting 42% on 12 attempts per game. So he's not there. That actually might help their defense a little bit, but it hurts their shooting. And then also one of their big men, Kamari McGriff, missed the last game against Utah. And this is not a team in K-State who's super deep at the big position. So very interesting, some of the potential absences or who's going to be available in this game for both teams that will certainly have a big impact on who comes out with the victory here. Now, beyond that, the importance of this one for Kansas, they have lost 3 consecutive games in Manhattan. I mean, go beat your rival, right? Like, I say this all the time. Like, to me, college sports is still built on the idea of beating your rival, beating your regional opponents, right? And with K-State, like, you've consistently lost this game now in Manhattan. Like, for whatever reason, just hasn't worked out. Last year, like, Coleman Hawkins and they're getting hot from 3 and stuff like that. And obviously KU last year, that wasn't one of KU's better teams. Year before, you're losing in Manhattan. Year before that was the one that Damon Wilson nearly dropped 40 points, but you still, came out on the bottom of that one. So find a way to snap that losing streak, right? Like that's part of this too, not just this Kansas team in terms of, you lost 2 early road games in Big 12 play. You now have an opportunity this week by already winning on the road at Colorado. If you can win at Kansas State, you overcome some of your early season road woes, because if you can just be 500 on the road, which obviously you can't be a perfect 500 on the road with playing 9 Big 12 road games, but if you can be 4-5 or 5-4, that at least puts you in the running to have a really special record or put up a really good season. So win this road game, and then you're to 500 in Big 12 road play, right? And you have that opportunity to do that in a place that you've struggled over the last couple of seasons, right? And then I think in general, just like trying to not just build momentum on the road, but build momentum in general. You look at Kansas right now, and they're sitting at 4-2 in Big 12 play. They're starting to get the momentum going. They've won 3 consecutive games. Well, momentum's only as good as your next game. So if you lose this game and then all of a sudden your next game's at home against BYU, and that's part of it too. Like the stretch after this one gets a lot rougher for KU. So take advantage of the ones that are going to be a little bit easier than the ones later, because you still, after this game, you still play BYU at home. You still play 2 more games against Arizona, the number 1 team in the country. You still have to go to Ames to play Iowa State again, who's probably going to be a little ticked off after how you beat them up in Lawrence, right? there's still a lot of other tough games. Like you have to play at Texas Tech still on the schedule. And there's other tough ones on the schedule still. So it's only going to get tougher from here. Take advantage of the one that has a higher percentage of you being able to win and build your momentum going into that really rough stretch so that you can kind of use that to try to springboard and grab some of those big wins potentially, but also kind of build up your nest egg that if you do have some losses there, that you're not in a point of desperation where it's like, hey, they have to win this game or this happens, right?
That's all for today's Big 3 in 30 College. If you follow pro basketball or football, the Big 3 in 30 has shows for the biggest news in the NBA and the NFL going up every weekday just like this one. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NBA or the Big 3 in 30 NFL, wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning into the Big 3 in 30 College.